Did Boris Johnson get Brexit done? Easy to answer. No. Brexit will never be done. It will continue to cause problems until we realise that doing Brexit is a bad idea. And just make sure you watch to the end of the video where you'll hear from Nick van Westenholz, who is the Director of Trade and Business Strategy at the NFU, who confirms what I'm saying. Actually, it seems complicated, but it's actually quite simple. And with a hard deadline coming up soon at the end of January, then we need to focus on this. This decision is about EU import checks, which have been 5 times delayed. And apparently Rishi Sunak is determined that they will go ahead. But this weekend, Jacob Rees-Mogg has intervened and said free trade is what's marvellous for everyone and Brexit was all about free trade.
It would have been an act of self-harm if we'd gone ahead with it. It would have increased costs for people, and we are trying to reduce costs. So that's the purpose of not going ahead with them and trying to ensure that the border flows as smoothly as possible, which benefits everybody. Free trade is hugely advantageous to consumers.
Do you know what impact this will actually have on prices in supermarkets?
Well, some costs it would be quite significant. That if you look at small deliveries of things like cheese, you were talking about 71% increase maximum level on the retail price. And frankly, at that level, goods just wouldn't have come in.
I'll tell you now, Britain does not have free trade. Britain had free trade with the biggest market in the world, with really good trading terms with the rest of the world, as a member of the European Union. But we ditched that for Brexit. We put in non-tariff barriers for ourselves and left our own borders wide open for anything to come in here without any checks via the EU. So that has created an unlevel playing field and left us wide open to a biosecurity risk and public health drama. And that's not good, is it? So, number one, implementing the checks. That is self-harming. Number two, not implementing the checks. That's self-harming. This is a terrible, terrible thing. How have we got to this place where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't? Is there a third way? Well, yes, of course there's a third way. We have to accept that Brexit has failed and that we align to EU regulations and begin the process to get back into the world's biggest, freest market, the single market. It's that simple. And there would be no real damage in doing that, apart from political damage to the people that said Brexit was a good idea. Ultimately, Brexit meant if we left leaving the European Union standards, it meant diverging from those standards, which is why the European Union want a hard border, because they don't want bad stuff coming in here. And this Conservative government have misled everyone at every opportunity. In their 2019 manifesto, they said to you that they would deliver Brexit and there wouldn't be a hard border between us and Northern Ireland. Well, guess what? There's a hard border now between us and Northern Ireland. And that's because of their desire to diverge from EU regs. But what they also did in their manifesto was say that they would uphold our high standards and they wouldn't lower standards. So if they didn't want to lower standards, we wouldn't need to have a hard border. But they do, and they did want to lower standards. And now we have had, in the last week, the new DEFRA secretary saying that for consumers to work out if the food is not up to British standards and not British food, there's going to have a sticker on there, a label. Well, I mean, that's marvellous, isn't it? They promised in the manifesto to uphold our high food, animal welfare and environmental standards. And now you're going to have a sticker on something saying, toxic, don't eat it, because it's not the standard you want it to be. Nobody voted for that. And besides, if you go into a restaurant or into a pub or into a care home or into a hospital or school, How do you know what you're eating? You can't have a label on your menu, can you, saying, you know, chicken, coronation chicken with chicken which is not sourced from the UK and is possibly toxic. I mean, this is just ludicrous. And the opinion polling all the way along has shown that 9 out of 10 British people are absolutely adamant about upholding high standards. So the decision really about Brexit should have been, instead of saying, do you want to leave or stay, it should have been, do you want to continue with high standard foods, animal welfare and environmental standards? Do you want to stay with that model, or do you want to go and really go down the route of deregulation? You know, this is just a road to a crash of standards for everybody, and it's not levelling up, it's levelling down, and I don't believe that many people voted for that, but you know, we'll see. I'm sure some people will respond saying, yes, I can't wait to have botulism from low standard food coming in here.
The impacts of the TCA and our trade policy, I think there is an enormous question mark over what it will mean for the sorts of things you mentioned: healthy food, affordable, consumer choice, etc. The one thing that worries me is if we do see a structural decrease in imports from the EU, and if we do see downward pressure on productivity in the UK, or certainly on prices in the UK, that increases the incentives for the UK government to liberalise its trade policy without also taking account of those sorts of issues you mentioned around the standards of the food that we eat. So the way that it's being produced, the nutritional content, etc. i.e., we just need to kind of get hold of food wherever we can at whatever cost. Now that's a sort of big issue, really plays into our wider trade policy, but it does concern me that the UK government may feel itself forced into doing, for example, quick deals with countries to secure food imports, regardless of how that food has been produced. So I think that would be the concern.